So good evening. I'm Tom McNaught. I'm the Executive Director of the Kennedy Library Foundation, and on behalf of Tom Putnam, who is the Director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, we would like to welcome all of you to this wonderful forum. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this special Kennedy Library Forum with the legendary, the awesome, Conan O'Brien, or as he is best known by his 5.7 million Twitter followers, the voice of the people. Now, there are many similarities between Conan O'Brien and President Kennedy. Both grew up in large Irish Catholic families in Brookline, Massachusetts, and both spent much of their youth goofing off while somehow still managing to get into Harvard. Not only did Conan manage to get into Harvard, he graduated magna cum laude with a degree in U.S. history and literature. And at the same time, he served as editor of the Harvard Lampoon for 2 years in a row. As great a comedic genius in his writing as he is in person, Conan wrote for Saturday Night Live and The Simpsons before going on to host Late Night with Conan O'Brien, The Tonight Show, and now Conan, which you can follow weeknights at 11 p.m. on TBS. People ask me why I named the show Conan, he said. I did it so I'd be harder to replace. We are so very proud that Conan O'Brien serves as a member of the Kennedy Library Foundation's Board of Directors. How that came to pass was his friendship with Caroline Kennedy. Caroline tells us that the more time she spent with Conan, the more she came to appreciate not only his keen sense of humor, but his deep interest in history, and in particular, presidential history. These interests ultimately convinced her that Conan would accept her invitation to join the board of directors. She knew that anyone who has busts of Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt in his office, a Dwight Eisenhower mug on his talk show desk, and photographs of her father hanging on the walls of his home would be an easy sell. Our moderator tonight is Wesley Morris, a film critic at the Boston Globe and recipient of this year's prestigious Pulitzer Prize for Criticism, a body of work which His body of work was described by the Pulitzer judges as smart, inventive film criticism, distinguished by pinpoint prose, and an easy traverse between the art house and big screen box office, end quote. A graduate of Yale, Wesley went on to write film reviews and essays for the San Francisco Examiner and the San Francisco Chronicle before joining the staff of the Boston Globe in 2002. We are absolutely delighted to have him with us this evening, and again, we congratulate him on his Pulitzer. Before closing, I wanted to note that in addition to serving on our board of directors, Conan O'Brien serves as the honorary chair of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library Foundation's New Frontier Network. And the purpose of that network is to bring together young leaders committed to advancing President Kennedy's ideals of civic engagement and public service to new generations. I want to welcome the many members of the New Frontier Network who are with us in the audience tonight, and to share with you why we asked Conan for his help in reaching out to your generation. It is because he believes so strongly in your potential to make this world a better place. In his closing words at the final broadcast of The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien, Conan had this message for his younger audience. I quote, "And all I ask is one thing," he said, and this is, I'm asking this particularly of young people that watch. Please do not be cynical. I hate cynicism. For the record, it's my least favorite quality. It doesn't lead anywhere. Nobody in life gets exactly what they thought they were going to get. But if you work really hard and you're kind, amazing things will happen. I'm telling you, amazing things will happen. I'm telling you, it's just true. Please join me in welcoming to the Kennedy Library Wesley Morris and Conan O'Brien.
Hi.
Hey,
How's it going?
it's great. I want to thank you for stepping in and doing this. This is amazing. And I
yes.
think this
You're welcome.
illustrates everything that's wrong with our country right now. The Pulitzer Prize winner is asking questions of the idiot on television. I think this should be the other way around, but maybe I'll come back and I'll talk to you.
No, I think what you'll discover in the next 59 minutes is that I have no idea what I'm doing. No, I mean, one of the things I was interested in talking to you about was your sort of comic persona, which is this sort of self-deprecating way of going about being funny that actually kind of belies your ambition in some ways. I mean, before your career had gotten started, you actually, you were the valedictorian at your high school, Brookline High School. You were the editor of your high school paper, is that right?
Yeah, let's just say yeah.
Yeah, is that true? I mean, if I say anything
I don't
that's not true,
remember. It was a long time ago.
Okay, so I believe
It was
the
the
answer to
early
that question is
1940s.
yes.
There was a war on. I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Your parents are here. They'll anything that's not true, someone will.
I love this. My parents are sitting in the front row judging me as we speak. Just shaking their heads.
Is it true? Did he edit the paper?
I think so.
Do you remember
My
that?
mother doesn't know. There were 6 of us. They're not sure which one I am. It was a kind of chaotic It's a Wonderful Life house with the things, everyone running around, and so they don't remember. They're a terrible authority on what I did when and who exactly I am. But I have a lot of people ask me about the self-deprecating thing over the years, and a lot of people say almost like it's an act. And I say, no, my people come by this very honestly.
Right.
We really do. It's not an act. And I think your personality is formed at a very young age. I mean, your core personality, scientists will claim that it's by the age of 2 or 3, but easily by the time you're 15 years old, you have established who you are, or 90% of what your core personality is going to be is all downloaded. And I was not an impressive person at all. If I am at all now, certainly 15 was not the time to take the core sample. So, I was a very skinny, gangly kid. I had acne. I had this giant mop of hair I still don't know what to do with. I had an odd name, which is my father's fault. And I didn't know where I really fit into the scheme of things. So being self-deprecating was a defense mechanism, and I came by it honestly.
Sure.
Then later on, you achieve these things, and you're still working. To this day, I'm working from the personality of a 15-year-old who's 6'4" and 111 pounds, and who can't seem to get eye contact with any woman in the United States. And
Tony,
so that's all.
I'll give you some. Just go like that.
Just go like that? I've tried that. I've
just
crouched
squat
down. It's not the same. But it's tough. I really believe that this part of my personality is very real, and whatever happens to me in life is not going to change it at this point.
Well, I think that's the thing that people respond to, though, right? I mean, that's it. That it seems genuine.
I thought it was my good looks.
Wow.
That's
number 2.
An indication that was wrong. No, I think people a long time ago, when I first got the late night job, and this is now hard to believe, it's almost 20 years ago, but when I first got that late night show, nobody knew who I was, and everybody was saying, who is this guy? And there were a lot of people saying, they were calling up my friends, they were calling up roommates, people who had known me. I mean, they didn't really even have a picture of me, the media.
Right.
They called my college roommate, Eric Reif, and they said, tell us about this guy. Who is he? And he said, the one thing I'll tell you about him is that he doesn't like to be funny at people. He likes to be funny with people. He likes to join with them and make something funny happen. And I think that's the core of what I do on my show, and what I've liked to do over time is make a funny situation happen with somebody else. And I don't know if that's coming from the family I come from, or a big family, but I like to make things happen with people. It's sort of a communal thing, as opposed to I'm not comfortable sitting next to someone and just, shooting a laser beam at them of comedy and maybe making them the victim. It makes me uncomfortable.
Right. Well, because then you kind of have to get out of that situation too.
Just go to commercial.
Yeah.
That's how all the other ones do it. But yeah, and it's not even really a moral choice. It's what do everybody in this room finds out at a certain point in their life what they're good at, what they're not good at. You arrive at that, and it's kind of a mystical experience. So I didn't choose. There are people who are brilliant at dissecting someone and taking them apart with their comedy. I'm not very good at that. That's not what I do.
Right.
So I'd love to say it was a moral choice. I don't even think it's a moral choice. This is just what I do.
But when did you figure that out, though? I mean, because well, first of all, I mean, I don't know if everybody knows this. There's some other impressive things about you that seem to have nothing to do with your comedy, like the fact that you wrote your senior thesis on children in Faulkner and O'Connor. Is that?
Yeah. It's a thesis that I worked really hard on this thesis there was the history and literature major, and you need to write a thesis your senior year, and it comes time, and I wrote this thesis, and it's the most pretentious title you've ever heard. It's Literary Progeria in the works of William Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor. And I wrote this thing, and it's like 90 pages long, and it's about the prematurely aged child in Southern literature as a metaphor for the South, which knew defeat in a country that had never known defeat. Yeah, right. People are filing out the back. People are jumping into the ocean and swimming away.
No, dude, there's an agent calling your phone right now.
Yeah.
That's a book.
That's a book. That's a movie. But I wrote this thesis and then flash forward to this tour I did 2 years ago, and I'm living the rock and roll lifestyle. We get all these great guest stars, and I'm playing 5,000-seat houses, and we're sold out across the country, and we're flying around, and we're on a bus, and it's like a rock show. And after the show, people would hold up T-shirts to sign, and sign my arm, and sign this, and sign that, and I'd come off this show, and someone said, "I've got your thesis!" Sign your thesis! And I just had this amazing flash from working away on one of the earliest word processors in 1984, which looked like kids today wouldn't believe it, but it looked like it was like a phone booth. And it had a keyboard attached to it, and you'd type away, and you had to keep putting quarters in it. It was in the Mather House. It was in a room at Mather House. This is all true. And an alarm would go off, so you'd be starting to get an idea, and you'd hear like, you put more quarters in it, and I wrote this thesis, and the idea of that misery, and then knowing that sometimes later, like an 18-year-old girl would be handing me my thesis after a rock show was, well, she was older than that. 19. Easy. But yeah, I don't know how that got started on that. You brought it up.
I brought up the thesis.
I had a flashback, yeah.
I mean, it's a great idea. And, I think that what we were talking about, this idea that you are, not as smart as the thing is that you don't seem as smart as you actually are. And you... But that's your thing, right?
Has anyone ever walked out of one of these before? No, I know.
You might be the first.
I know exactly.
But
yeah.
I mean,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You make it easier for people to sort of be around you,
right?
By underplaying all your virtues and strong characteristics.
Well, also the other thing is, I really do honestly. The more, if anybody knows, the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. So, I started teaching when I first moved out to Los Angeles, I started teaching myself the guitar. I went and bought the Mel Bay chord book and a $90 guitar, and started sitting in my boxer shorts in my $380 a month apartment after work and teaching myself the guitar and living off ramen noodles and tuna fish. And I remember thinking, all I want to do is know 3 chords. What happens is, once you start to get to a level that you never thought you'd reach before, all you know is how terrible you are, because you just keep getting exposed to new levels. And I really do have that feeling constantly of, I'll think I'll have a funny show, I'll think I've done something funny, and then I'll see one of Woody Allen's best movies, or something Bob Hope did in the 1950s, or I'll read something that James Thurber wrote, or I'll, just constantly be reminded that I don't know anything. And then you just go back to square one. And the more you think you know about history, the more you realize, I really don't know anything yet about history. So there's a constant process, and it's just probably my personality, but I like to be humbled. I like to realize I do not know and I'm never that far from the kid from Brookline High School who felt very insecure about going to Harvard. when I went to Harvard and I met people who had gone to Exeter and Andover and they had taken Latin. I hadn't taken Latin. There wasn't Latin in my high school. I was very intimidated. And it's that process over and over again. And I think that just keeps happening throughout life. You think you've got it figured out, and then you have kids. And then you're presented again with you know nothing. You know nothing, and you have a lot to learn, and they look at you like you're an idiot. And half the time, they've just watched you do something really stupid. So that's a humbling experience. So I like that. I like to constantly be brought back down again.
And we get that. I mean, I think that's all I was really saying before, is that part of your brilliance as a comedian is to underplay your brilliance. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you're not be consciously doing it, but you wouldn't have gotten this far if there weren't, and wouldn't
Well,
have
I think
this...
it's all, you know what it is? It's all, everybody has, and every famous person that you're ever going to meet or see, all they've done is hyper-refine the defense mechanisms that they used when they were on the playground, and they wanted to use the parallel bars, and someone hit them in the face. My experience was you go through a checklist when you're young, and I don't know how many young people we have here, but you go through a checklist of what am I not good at? And that fills up really quickly. I mean, that was for me. I just did very quickly, it gets sorted out. Let's play ball for the first time with other kids. I'm not good at that. Let's go talk to the pretty girl. That didn't work. And it's just a constant list, and I went down the list, and it just kept going and going and going, and then I found out, you know what, I just diffused that situation by being funny. And he was about to strike me in the face. This is my dad we're talking about. Come on, he loves it, and it's true. This is this morning I'm talking about. But you're working your way down the list, and I diffused a situation, and I remember, the nickel drops, and everybody in this room had that situation, whether it's humor or being an athlete or you're a good cook, whatever, you figure out what it is, and when you're a kid, man, I've got that. And I kept looking for other things, and they weren't showing up, so I'll work on that some more, and I'll work on that some more, and that leads to a TV show and mental illness.
But what was the moment when you realized that was what was going on with you?
I realized, I knew that it's something I really liked to do. I liked to perform. I did that, and then I was at some point, like in 5th grade, I remember 4th grade, I used to be in plays all the time, and I used to write things, and I thought, this is something I'd like to do, and I was fascinated with, for some reason, I had a out-of-time fascination with movies from the 30s and 40s, because they were shown a lot here in Boston on the UHF stations. I don't know if anyone remember, but in the days before cable, there was the ABC affiliate, the NBC affiliate, the CBS affiliate, and then Channel 56 and Channel 38. And they would show old movies. That's all they would show. And I used to watch those, and it was lost on me that these were made 50 years ago. And so I would watch these movies like Yankee Doodle Dandy, where Jimmy Cagney's talking real fast, and he's dancing, and he's singing, and I would say, that's what you need to know to be an entertainer. Of course, it's the 1970s. Like an idiot, I don't understand that there's been a huge cultural movement. And I go to my parents, and I said, I'm even talking like Jimmy Cagney. I'm like, now see here, you. And I said, I need to learn how to be a tap dancer. And my parents were like, what are you talking about? And I said, I want to be in show business someday, and this kid's got to know how to tap his toes, you see? And they were like, well, why are you smoking, Why are you in black and white? And we'll get to that later. You shut your yap, see? I got to learn how to dance. So they went and they got me a tap dancing teacher, God bless him. They went and they called all around, and they found this guy, Stanley Brown, who had been the protege of Bilbo Jangles Robinson and taught, and this is all completely true. And I went, and he's this very older African-American gentleman who was a great tap dancer, and he lived in a dilapidated studio. Everyone there was a jazz dancer, and everyone was black, and then this white kid with orange hair would show up with tap shoes under his arm. And it's like, hey, you, I was short, and then I grew overnight, like the Hulk. I grew like 3 feet in 1 year, and you could hear it. Like my parents could hear bone knitting up in the attic.
But when you were taking this tap class, you were
I was
just a little
still
guy.
small, and I was learning tap, and I thought, this is what I need to know. Then a few years later, I thought, I'm in Boston. And at the time, TV or show business could not have felt further away. The only experience any of us had with any kind of celebrity was Robert Urich was in Spencer for Hire. And they shot it a few exteriors, like around here. And that was my experience with show business, is that I knew someone who saw Robert Urich in Filene's basement. And so I remember thinking, this isn't going to happen. And my dad's he's a scientist, and my mom's a lawyer, and forget it. So I buckled down to be a really hardcore student and really worked hard and was very serious, and then got into Harvard thinking I'm going to be a serious writer of letters, and I'm going to do great things. And within days of getting to Harvard, my roommate, John O'Connor, said, I'm going to the Harvard Lampoon to check it out. I didn't even really know much about the Harvard Lampoon, but I went along, and the rest of it just happened.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, I was blown away that people valued humor as something other than just, this is what you do for your friends to make them laugh. There was actually, and then I started to hear tell that you could go places, and they would maybe pay you if you did this, and you'd think, is that possible? I mean, it sounded crazy, and I ended up going out to Los Angeles, and lots of twists and turns and ups and downs, and so it was not a conscious, there was never a conscious decision for a long time to get into this business, I think, until the Lampoon. And then I started to feel like, this is interesting. This seems to have some merit beyond getting people not to hit me, you know?
Right.
So that changed everything.
No, it's interesting that I think a lot of people who figure out what they want to do sort of figure it out by accident. And, you know, it's sort of reverse ambition. I think a lot of it is luck. So if you're in the right place at the right time, or you think you might like something, so you try it and it sticks.
Yeah.
But at various points, I'm sure that you, like once you were in Los Angeles, I mean, it sounds at some point that you sort of became a comedy student.
Yes.
In some ways.
What I always pay attention, my dad, who is always been interested in comedy and always been interested in why did this work and why did that not work, and still loves to call me occasionally and explain to me why something I did on television didn't work or did work. But he had an ear for it and an eye for it, and I adopted the same thing, which is we just both love to watch Johnny Carson. A lot of people in my family love to watch him, and my dad was a real loved late night television, and the movies, the Peter Sellers Pink Panther movies, and just so wildly different stuff. But the movie Sleeper, Woody Allen, we would all appreciate the same moments. So you don't even realize you're a student of these things. Your passion takes you this way. It's not, if there's one theme you could maybe take away from tonight, I think very little of this is decision. I think a lot of it is passion, and you have very little control over that. You as an individual, you just find yourself being drawn certain ways, and you keep refining that and working at it. And I think I've always said I'm very unimpressed by talent, and by that I mean I have many people over the years say, my kid's going to be great. He's got a lot of talent. And I think I do nothing but meet people with lots of talent. It's what you do with it. There's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of talent in Los Angeles, New York. There's a lot of talent throughout the country. And you can see this all the time in sports. People have an incredible amount of talent. And how many times have you heard the story that the person with the most natural talent disappears, and it was the person who was largely ignored? Hard work, there is no substitute for it. And that's the thing I'm always telling young people and interns that work on the show, that's the bad news, is that they have found no substitute for working really hard. I worked my ass off when I was a kid and in my 20s and 30s, and I still work really hard, and I think there is no substitute for it. And I think that is the good news and the bad news. I mean, I have no idea if they someday invent a talent meter that tells you how much natural talent you were born with, I'd be afraid to go near it. Because I don't know. It might say, not that much, but you worked your ass off and you compensated this much, or you had some, but did you maximize it? And I think that was my obsession, was whatever I have, I want to max it out. I want to see what I can do with this. And that's probably what made the biggest difference.
So we should say that this is a conversation with Conan O'Brien. I'm Wesley Morris from the Boston Globe, and we're talking.
Oh, that was was that for the radio?
That's for the radio.
Oh, I thought you just had a seizure
Yes,
of some
no.
kind.
I warned you about this.
I thought your doctor told you once in a while, tell yourself who you are and where you are,
Yeah.
and proceed.
Yes.
I'm Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, a Pulitzer Prize fell on my head. I forgot who I was.
Exactly. That scared me. But I'm okay now.
I think one of the, I was kind of like a lot of people a couple years ago when that whole Jay Leno thing
Right.
happened. I was sort of struck by, and this sort of goes, it's in line with what we have been talking about, which is this sort of, what makes you so likable and so relatable in a lot of ways. And a lot of it has to do with this defense mechanism you developed that became like a comedy style. But when that whole thing went down, and I think the version that we got anyway, very much made people able to relate to your side of the story, and made it really difficult to have any sympathy for Jay Leno. And that, I don't think, had anything to do with either one of you. I think that just became how the media, well, I mean, you might beg to differ. What's your,
I
say it.
remain silent.
Okay. But it was just interesting that the nation sort of had chosen sides, I think. And you seemed much more sympathetic, both because I think of who we imagine you to be as a person, and also, you know, I think we were able to relate to what we thought was you having something promised to you, given to you, and then rescinded.
Right.
And I was just sort of curious if there was anything about yourself during that entire fiasco that you learned that surprised you, or maybe.
I think the biggest surprise in that whole thing, or the best thing that I was able to take away from that was I come from people pleasers. We aim to please. We O'Briens. We are nice people where we tend to try and make everyone around us happy, and especially in a work environment, we're very deferential. We just want to work harder than we are expected to work and get less. We're comfortable in that kind of role. Right. It's true. We don't want a lot of attention. It's just the culture. It might be a very Irish Catholic culture. I don't know, but work this hard. Don't stick your head out too much. Do a really good job. Make people happy. And I think I had always been that way throughout my entire career. And I think what was interesting about that moment was it was the first time in my entire career where I was being told, we need you to go and in that situation, we need you to slide over and move the show to 12:05, move the Tonight Show into the next day. And I think because they knew me so well, they just said, look, he's done everything else, he's going to do this. And I didn't. And that was kind of almost a surprise to me as well. But I just decided I don't know what's going to happen. I might be completely through in television, but I can't do this. This doesn't feel right, and so I'm not going to do it. And that was, I think, the healthiest personal moment that I took from it. And I think in terms of other people responding to anything, it was always really important to me, and it's still important to me, that people understand that I did not feel entitled to anything. I don't believe in that. I really don't believe in I was promised the Tonight Show, and so I get to, it's my right to, there was a bunch of circumstances behind the scenes that made that not work out in that situation, and I wasn't happy about it, and you know, it was a major disappointment, but no one's, we live in a culture of entitlement a lot of times, where people, how dare you, this is my right, and I've always been very clear about saying, it's nobody's right to host the Tonight Show, it's absurd, that was an opportunity, it didn't work out, for a million different reasons, some known, some unknown. What the hell? Life is short. A lot of people have a lot of problems. Keep moving. And I think that may have been the tone that a bunch of people responded to, was just this feeling of, Don't pity me,
Right.
because...
Well, you also didn't, I don't know, there were two things that came out of it. The first of which was your explanation, which was really about the Tonight Show legacy, right? It was not about, like, it wasn't framed as you being a great person.
Right.
It was, there's this show that I loved as a kid. I've always wanted to host it. I got to host it, but you guys want to move it to 12:05, which is no longer tonight. It's tomorrow. Then it's Matt Lauer and Ann Curry, but really early, which would make it Carson Daly. I don't know.
Right.
But it's not the thing that you want it to do. And so it really ultimately became about the institution of the
Right.
Tonight Show.
Right.
Which was also sort of charming and it's a really good case to be made for that. And then there's the embargo, right? Which happened, and that was the thing that you managed to turn into great comedy, which was the thing where you couldn't be on television.
Right, for a period
more
of
or less,
time,
right.
yeah.
Which sort of made people mad and sympathetic to you. Can you talk about the process to sort of exploit that?
It was,
that
again,
night?
it's all the best things are accidents. We finished
Right.
the last Tonight Show, and at the spur of the moment, we ended up doing a live jam. I said those final words, and then I went over to the performance area, and I jammed with Will Ferrell, his very pregnant wife, who gave birth a few hours later. And then these amazing guitarists, Beck, and we had ZZ Top, and it was this fantastic jam band, and we sang Freebird, and it was just this very silly, jubilant Viking funeral for the show, which felt like it's my tone, it's silly, it's an up note, it's not a down note, and it's saying this is absurd and funny, and we get a minute left of this Tonight Show, let's really have fun with it. So we did that. It was over. I love playing music, and I knew that my producer was standing off to the side, and I said, "Now I'm not allowed to perform comedy on television or the radio, or I'm not allowed to do this or do that. Am I allowed to perform live?" And he said, "Yeah, I think so." And I said, "I think all I want to do is just put on a fake mustache and play in different rockabilly bands in nightclubs for a couple of months, just as a weird Andy Kaufman thing that I would do." And so he said, "Sure, whatever. That's pathetic." But I thought, that's what I want to do. And then what happened is he mentioned it to my agent, who happened to work at Endeavor, which just happened to merge with a company that did live performances. And someone punched it into a computer and said, if he went out on the road, you should bring a real band with you, and you could actually you could sell out across the country. And we thought, that's kind of interesting, like as performance art, to just go across the country.
Yeah.
And my whole career has been, take you back to that kid who's trying to tap dance in 1978. I've always been out of time. I've always been trying to get back to vaudeville. I've always wanted to be a vaudevillian. And so this was my chance to actually tour vaudeville theaters across the country and do a song and dance and comedy review. And so I did it, and there was a whole grassroots movement behind it. And we thought, we have to keep this pure, and we had some offers from big corporations we'll help underwrite this, but you have to let us have corporate ticket sales for a day first. And we said, we can't do it.
Right.
Can we just have the money? Turns out that's not the way it works. But we ended up, like American Express ended up saying, we get it, that's cool, we're all right, we just want to help. And it was great. And that was one of the best, that might be the single best, most interesting, fascinating time of my life creatively. And it was all an accident. It was just one thing following another, and the next thing you know, I'm, playing with Eddie Vedder in front of 5,000 people, and thinking, how did any of this happen? He's from Pearl Jam, people. Sorry, this didn't go well. I just looked at it as a sea of, what is this Vedder you speak of? Tell us more.
But did you feel free? Were you scared? Did you know?
Yeah, I'm always scared. I think it's good to be scared.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what I tell my child when she's crying at night. It's good to be scared.
Can't we narrate? That's going to be a great memoir.
They're already medicated, but I believe in being scared. I think the minute especially if you're not whenever anybody, I don't know if you as a writer, you run into people who tell you how much they love writing. And they just, I just love writing.
I don't know who those people are.
And I think, I don't want to read what you write.
Yeah.
I have no interest. It can't be good. Whenever someone tells me that just, the act of being out in front of people and performing is exhilarating, the preparation and the before part is not, and I think that should never change. So I think it's good to be scared. I think it's good to be, doubting yourself. I think it's good to constantly be holding things up to the light and saying, is this any good? Does this work? And unfortunately, it's also good to fail, which is very hard to explain in this culture, to people. Wow. You just exposed yourself as person over there in rags. Finally! Uh-oh! Well,
no, but that actually it's true. So I wanted to sort of initially I wanted to start by talking about this because we're in the JFK Library, but I mean
right.
it's as good a time as any to talk about it now, which is something that I had read that you talked to my colleague Mark Shanahan maybe yesterday, and one of the things you discussed with him was this sort of Irish pride that you have, and growing up in the sort of JFK era, or
right.
around that time, and how that family sort of, how you lived in a household that had, the full Irish American experience.
Yeah.
Your grandmother was not well-to-do. She came over and helped.
She actually had been born here, but I had said that a great experience for me was my mother's mother lived with us for a period of time after my grandfather passed away, and she lived well into, I think, her late 90s. So she had really, I think she'd been born in 1890, and so she had the full experience of witnessing firsthand discrimination against Irish Catholics, and she had. When you think about someone who's born at that time, you think about what that generation saw. I mean, she's born in a world of ice wagons being pulled by horses and Irish Catholics being discriminated against, and she dies, 20 some odd years after President Kennedy, and there's a space shuttle, and you just, that's an astounding lifetime to see all of that happen. But it's very interesting when you read history and you think about history, and I'm a real history buff, I'm always struck by how things weren't that long ago. Do you know what I mean? And I think I work with a lot of young people who, they think that the Reagan administration was 50 years ago, or it may as well be to them. Like, they really do. The time has sped up so much in the digital age that things that happened 15 years ago seem like 100 years ago. I think that's a byproduct of the digital age we're in, is people's attention spans are so short that suddenly it's like, tell us more of this Jimmy Carter that you speak of, And you're like, well, okay, they don't know, and which can be a little frightening at times. But you look at the transformation that happened in 1960, and what an issue John F. Kennedy's Catholicism was when he was running for president. And today, people just think that's absurd. But I remembered my grandmother would be going off to school at the Michael Driscoll School, and it's this incredibly liberal, school system, and one of the best, school systems in the United States, and integrated, and they're constantly, hypersensitive to everyone's ethnicity and background, and discussing it constantly, and are you comfortable? And I'm headed off to school, and my grandmother said to me, well, it's St. Patrick's Day, so be ready. And I said, be ready for what? And she said, the Protestants are all going to taunt you at school. She said they're going to put chalk in your milk. Just then my African-American friend with a giant afro shows up, and it's like, it was a crazy experience where that was her experience, was that on St. Patrick's Day you could get teased. And I had friends that were from Iran during the Iranian hostage crisis that went to our high school. That's how diverse and integrated everything was. But I didn't take it for granted because my grandmother gave me that experience. She gave me that sort of snapshot into things changed a lot. And I never took it for granted that that this was something that had always been this good for us.
Right,
you know?
right. No, I mean, I read that and I just thought about my grandmother and, the fact that, she still can't believe that, there's a Negro in the White House.
Right.
I mean, she's still beside herself. And I just found that very touching that, the idea that you grew up in this house.
There are these transformative moments in American politics, and we're in the midst of one. But I think that was a big moment that everyone could relate to. A few years ago, as Obama's election was just. Now the nice thing is the byproduct of that is going to be young people who don't think that's such a big deal.
Right.
Everyone in this room knows, no, that's a huge deal. After everything this country's been through, that is still a huge deal. But the byproduct will probably be people, in a good way, thinking that that is not as momentous a change as it really was, which is probably what we eventually need to get to.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was some of the guests you've had on your show. And I think that my personal favorite guest, mostly because, you didn't know what to think of her beyond what we were supposed to think of her until she came to visit you. It's Martha Stewart.
Right.
You guys have, you've got Andy, and you and Andy have your thing.
Right.
But I feel like you and Martha Stewart have, I don't know what it is. It's just really good comedy. And you clearly, I don't know if you really love her and think she's great, but the thing that, that comes through.
We are lovers.
It didn't seem kinky to me, but.
No, it's very kinky and erotic.
I'm going to have to eat later, so you.
This is, you know what it
Tone
is?
it
She's a terrific, it's the oldest rule in the book is when I I do best with a authority figure who has some gravitas.
Yes.
That's the best person for me to bounce off of. So I am the silliest, and you think about it, who's better than Martha Stewart? She is one of the biggest brands in the world. She's efficient. It's all about this is how you do it. You do it correctly. You don't make a mistake. This is how it's done, and it's perfect, and on to the next thing. And then you put her next to me, and I'm already an ass, but around someone like that, I could become much more of an ass.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I'm going way out of my way to ruin the chiffon cake we're making. And she knows it's comedy, but she can't stand it. She's just can't stand it. So it's fantastic because she knows there are cameras and she knows there are people there and she knows it's Conan O'Brien and she's always saying, well, he's very funny and he's a little bit of a madman, so you'll have to excuse Conan if he acts a little. Anyway, we're going to make the cake and then it's very important to put it right like that. And I'll go, you mean like this? And she'll be like, no! No! Don't! And she can't help it. She just can't help it. And it's so funny because, and then people laugh. It's funny to see, and it's just, perfect when someone just reaches over and ruins it. And
But the thing that's funny is the thing that you were getting at before, which is that it's not mean to her.
No.
It's not mean-spirited. You're just being obnoxious, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
you
no,
know
it's
that
true.
How long until Martha detonates?
Yeah.
In this segment.
Well, there was a segment we did for the old late night show where she's taking me through her place in Connecticut, which is where she makes all the food and
Turkey Hill.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, but this, you've never seen anything like it. I mean, no offense, Mom, but it's an amazing kitchen. There's just everything is perfect. And at one point, she's showing me all of these spoons in a drawer, and they're all perfectly laid out. And she said, and it's important, I have a system, and I can feel my hands trembling. I can't help it. And she's like, these are the soup spoons, and they're S, so they're here. And these are the teaspoons, but it's a T, so we put them here, and that's number 1, and number 5 goes here. And I just reached over and I went, and something inside her died. And it was absolutely fantastic. And I know that, then 9 people came in and spent all night putting it back. While Martha slept in her hyperbaric chamber. I'm just always looking for people that I bounce off of in that way. And like I say, authority figures are fantastic. I just love to, and then I become the more of a child for some reason.
Is there somebody else that does that for you who?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There are lots of people. There are lots of people who do that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's a lot of. I sometimes think like revered actors when they come on. If someone's revered in certain ways, that it can just be funny.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that belief that I don't revere them probably as much as I should. So it can get. I'm having trouble thinking. I'll think of a name in a second, but Pauly Shore from Biodome. Just a legend.
Revered, yes.
Yeah, revered.
Is there a difference in being on TBS versus being on NBC for you in terms of maybe how free you feel or how?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a.
Because I noticed, as a viewer, I noticed a difference.
Yeah, there's definitely there was a lot of transformative. What I went through was transformative in a lot of ways. I think one of the other things was it was a reality check on. I'm just very grateful to have a television show, and so I come to it. If you work in television for a long time, especially in comedy, you start to get a lot of clicks on the odometer, you can start to feel. It sounds crazy, but you can start to feel like I've got to go in and do that today, and that just builds up over time. Like just gunk builds up in an engine. If you're burning long enough and fast enough and hard enough, you start to build up this. It's almost very natural to build up. I've got to go do that. And I think that starts to creep into your life a little bit. And plus, over time, you can start to feel like this institutional weight of things. And I think going through everything I went through just made me realize I really love doing this, and I'm getting to do it. And I think there's a lot of joy that I get to come back to a place of I get to do this. I'm really lucky to get to do it. I don't know how much longer I get to do it, but let's really have fun and try everything we can think of.
Do you think it's all clicking now? I mean, not that it wasn't previously, but
yeah,
do you think
it was.
that?
I think it just does feel like we went from being, when you're in a big network institutional system, it can feel like the boat turns more slowly, and we went to a little cigarette boat that zips around and pirouettes, and I think with the social media, everything we've done, we're much more agile. We're able to be much more agile than we used to be able to be. I think we're able to respond more to the way the media culture exists now. And so that's all very liberating. It's really fun. So I'm never someone who will tell you it's all clicking, because I've always have that it could be better.
Sure.
Let's just push and push, and that's the thing that I'm always repeating at my show is we're getting there, we're getting there. And they all just laugh at me now because they know they'll come and visit me in a home when I'm in my 90s, and I'll be like, we're getting there, And they know that that's just my mantra, is that we're getting there, but we're never there.
Do you get to watch the other guys?
No, I don't find that helpful to me.
Right.
And it's also the last thing I want to do when I come home.
Sure.
And as I mentioned, I am a history buff. I know Robert Caro was just here. This is how much of a geek I am. I got when I heard that Robert Caro's book had been finished but not published yet, I made all these back channel calls. Other people were trying to get into the Playboy Mansion. I made all these calls to get like an editor's draft of Robert Caro's book, and it came, with like just in this big tablet, and I read it, under the covers, like it was porn. And I just.
For some people, it is porn.
It is,
so.
but it is for me, so I love that. And when I come home, I like to watch, a Frontline piece, or I like to watch a documentary. I like to watch something that's the complete opposite of what I do for a living. That's what recharges my batteries, is watching, the Tsar's empire crumble in, 1917. That's what, and my wife is just, I always come home and she says, hey, I've got a 30 Rock saved up. Let's watch it. It takes place in 30 Rockefeller Center about an NBC show. And I'm like,
The PSTD
yeah,
kicks
that's
in.
not how I want to spend my time relaxing. I want to see, World War II. There are all these channels now that feed my addiction. I want to watch
there's a
a
lot of
long
them.
documentary about Johnson or whoever. I just want to. I want to learn more about American history. That's sort of my hobby.
And, I guess this is sort of a fairly reductive question, but do you wish that there are ways that you could integrate those two things more actively? Maybe, or do you like keeping them discrete?
I kind of like, keeping them discreet. Every now and then I get to do something interesting. A few years ago, I was asked to speak alongside an academic about Lincoln's humor. I had done all this reading about Lincoln's speeches and trying to explain what it is that made Lincoln so funny. And so I agreed to do this event. And then they said, okay. And I said, where are we going to perform this? They said, it's in Washington. And I said, that's great. And then they told me it's at Ford's Theater. And I got creeped out. And then I thought, I guess, it's a theater. So we did it there. And it actually ended up being a great evening of just talking about trying to bring his comedy to life, Lincoln's humor to life. And what was it about his writing and his sense of humor that I thought was actually kind of modernist and of our time rather than of his time. And so we ended up talking about that, and it was really fun. And I got access to, getting through the back door of some museums and looking at some documents. And I thought, okay, that's great. Other than that, I like to leave it to the professionals. There are people that I'm aware that I'm an amateur, and I like to read, and I like to read history, but there are people that really know this stuff, and they should be up talking to people.
Right.
And, every now and then it just informs my comedy a little bit, but that's about it.
But one of the things as a person who sort of watches something like movies, for instance, professionally, and you wish that, you get a lot of movies about history, but you get very few movies now where the people making it have some perspective, like, on the history, actually, that's funny.
Right.
There are very few good satires, very few good farces. Those are all on TV now.
Right.
And I feel like, your sensibility might lend itself.
We every now and then
with
we
some
do
structure.
Yeah, it finds its way into the show, and we have certain obsessions. But for the most part, I don't consciously try to do that, it's something that's just my hobby more than anything else.
Right.
If it ends up coming into the show, it's usually an accident.
So I think it's about question time. I'm going to read questions that you guys have given to me or to the library for Conan. There's a lot.
It says, who the hell do you think you are?
Well, if that's one of the questions, then I don't know.
Who
what
do you think you are?
Let's see. I can't read that one. Sorry. Okay, how about this one? I grew up watching your show for years and love your sense of funny and comedic timing! ! Have you ever considered doing a movie or a sitcom?
No. I don't have the temperament for it. I don't think anybody really wants to see it.
I don't know if I agree with that, but
well, no, like movies. Movies are, I burn fast. And so I'm actually in the right medium for me, which is we think of something at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we tape 2 hours later and then you see it at 11 o'clock at night. That's my temperament. I've watched people that go in and if anyone here watched a movie get made, it's just maddening. And they
then
sit
you would
there.
die.
Yeah, I would just, my soul would leave my body, and I also don't think that is what I'm meant to do. I don't think I would, I think if, and I think I've found the right format for me.
Right.
And I think, in me in a sitcom where I share an apartment with a chimp, is
You are good with animals.
Is in development, yeah. That will be on TV.
You and Jack Hanna have a thing.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so Conan, please comment about President Kennedy's wit and his ability to make people laugh. Thank you.
That's very presumptuous, the thank you. It will be done. In advance, I thank you. Now do as I say. You know, I think about this a lot. I really think that he is up there with Lincoln as one of the funniest American presidents we've ever had. He had.
I think, by the way, most people, you're blowing some minds right now. Do we all know that Lincoln's funny?
Yeah, Lincoln's really funny. Lincoln's we can't go into it now. I'm doing something at the Lincoln Library next week. I've got a lot of time here. I think Kennedy is truly one of the most naturally funny presidents that we've had, and we have not had a lot. It's not something, we do not tend to elect funny people. And I think now we have a media-savvy culture, so presidents are getting better at coming across as funny when they need to, but I don't think it comes from a natural place. Mm-hmm. I think everything I know about John F. Kennedy is that he was naturally quite funny throughout his life, but he also experienced a lot of problems, you know, in his youth with his health, and he had to develop. You talk about a defense mechanism. I think, you know, he almost died many times as a young man of different diseases and different ailments, and he was very sick, and that was something that he learned at a very young age to. I always thought that probably sharpened his sense of irony, his sense that, you know, he had been in World War II. He had kind of experienced firsthand how screwed up things can be in the military and in the Navy, and I think he learned his ironic sense of humor. It came by him naturally, but he also developed it through experiencing a lot of these hardships, and it made him see the world, I think, he had an ironic, amused, and some thought almost like detached wit about how screwy the world can be, which I think is invaluable as a president, as an American president. I don't ever get the sense that he took himself that seriously in a good way. You know, he was immune to that a little bit in a way that I think some American presidents haven't been. He was able to be a little detached from that and see everything as being somewhat humorous or twisted.
Right. Then there's the opposite, where everything is kind of funny with some presidents.
In what way?
I'm thinking of a specific person who, whatever. We'll just move on to the next question, because then it just turns into a different conversation.
You mean unintentionally funny?
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it alone.
So, what are your views on the intersection? This is a related topic or question. What are your views on the intersection of comedy and politics? Is The Daily Show good for the country?
Oh, it's great. I think The Daily Show and Colbert, I mean, those guys are extremely talented and
you had a little thing,
funny.
A little mock thing with them.
I had a mock feud with them during the writers' strike, where we all ended up beating each other up. And they're extremely good and very good for the country because they're intelligent. And whenever someone's intelligent is doing comedy that's popular, I believe that that's good for the country. So I think, and what Colbert is doing right now with the super PACs, I think is brilliant. And he's such a fun person to watch. The times I've gotten together with him, he almost feels like, yeah, he could have been another brother in my family. He's very physically funny and silly and would have fit right in. So yeah, I think it's very good for the country. Everyone's got a different strength. I've always gone in sort of this more, some critics have liked to say almost like a Dada streak. Like I like to comment on politics, but it's not comedically, but it is not my lifeblood. It's not in my bone marrow. I think we do it, and I do it when it strikes me as funny, but we also do a lot of comedy that is very silly and doesn't really have much to do with anything, and probably is of no benefit to this country. And I've always said to people, if you're getting a message from my show, you're wrong. There's no message to my comedy. We're here to amuse.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, this is a Brookline high school or Brookline alumni question. What's your favorite high school memory? That's from Jason, who graduated in 1996.
As a kid. Let's see, my favorite high school memory would be, it might be that I got to do the, this just in.
Breaking news at the JFK Library.
Yeah, I got to be in this school talent show my senior year. I got to MC it, and my co-MC was the school's janitor, and and I don't remember even how that happened, but that was my introduction to show business, was MCing this senior show, and I have an old black and white photograph of it where we're doing what looks to be, I have no memory of it, but it looks to be the lamest routine in the history of show business, where the janitor, this big beard, and I'm made up to look like a ventriloquist dummy, and I'm sitting on his lap, and we're doing a bit that looks absolutely dreadful. So I remember that being just a big moment for me.
Who is the best comic we don't know about, and why aren't they famous yet?
Every time I say that, it turns out they're really well known. I mean, I've said that about Louis C.K. years ago, and
you said that years ago. That didn't really happen.
It happened because I said it.
Yes.
Welcome to Delusion Theater. I'm trying to think. I don't.
Or who are some people you really
Well,
like?
Pete Holmes is really great, right, Sona? Pete Holmes is someone that we're working with right now. He was a very talented comedian who people don't. I think he's starting to become well known. He's a very good comic, so I would put Pete Holmes in that category. I'll stick with him for now.
Okay.
I was going to say someone else, but I don't like that guy.
Poor guy.
Nah, he'll be fine. He'll do very well.
Let's see, I should actually remove the ones that I've asked, because
It looks like there's one word per.
Right, you should see some of these. Like that's a.
Oh my God, that's a
short story.
That's a proclamation of some kind. Yeah.
What is your opinion of the homogenization of network television to, quote, play to the Midwest/Middle America, unquote? That's from Mary Ellen Walsh from Weymouth.
Oh, I don't really think that's the case these days. I think that there's, television, in a way you could say it used to be more homogenous because there was only 3 networks. So I think it's less homogenous now. I think there's so much on television. Right. There's so much variety. There's so much, and there's so many people playing to certain niches that I think it's the least homogenous television's ever been. The fact is, it's art meets commerce, so there's always going to be an attempt to get the most people under the tent. You can't fault networks for doing that.
Are you thinking about an audience when you do the show, or do you just?
I don't think about it at all. I don't think about it. To me, that's an abstraction.
And there's nobody. Is the difference maybe between TBS and MEC
there wasn't even that much. There's not much. I mean, there's less of that. Like, it would be really good if you could, but there's never. I've never even let that sway me too much. I do my thing my way. That's the only thing I know how to do. I don't know how to do it another way, frankly, and so I'd like to pretend that it was my, high sense of moral purpose, but it's not. Again, it's just that this is how I know how to. This is what strikes me as funny. This is the way I like to do it. This is how I know how to do it. I don't know how to do it any other way.
Right.
So these are the people I find interesting. This is the kind of show I want to do. So if that becomes untenable and there's no place to do it, it's time to learn something else.
But you also don't strike me as necessarily a sort of czar-like figure. I mean, if I disagreed with you about the direction a particular segment or something was going,
I'd crush you. I'd have you
crush
you like a bug.
No, but I mean, you'd be open to the possibility that...
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I like to collaborate, but I'm also going to be honest that I am, I have some people that work with me here. I'm strong-willed, and when I see things a certain way, and I think it's the right way to do it, it's all I can do to just, and people are saying dissenting things. When I see things a certain way, I become a little like Stalin in my economic policies. I believe in collectivizing grain. Other than that, I'm quite kind.
Okay. So we have time to sort of take some questions from people who've left them on Twitter. If somebody could,
Oh my God.
There's a screen that's coming down. Look out.
I wasn't told about this. This is like something in a James Bond lair that they would. All right. Oh, thank you. That's terrific.
So I mean, how about you pick some of these? Actually, you can't. Can they?
The
that
first one I
scroll
can
up and
see
down?
is, what do you see as a celeb's role in political activism? Prolific like Clooney, reserved, or something in between? From Kevin Slane at Case Lane. Sorry. And there's his photo that he's chosen to.
You guys can't see the photo.
Oh, you can't see the photo.
He's having a great time.
He's having a great time in this photo. He's just coming off the slopes, and he's high, and it's all good.
I think he's wearing a colander.
He thinks he skied, but he didn't ski.
Right.
I'm not a big believer. Contrary to why I'm, being here, I'm not someone who is comfortable being a big activist, or someone who I've never felt like I was elected to anything, and so I'm always, for myself, a little wary of that. I actually, as a fan of 19th century history, I know that back in the 19th century, actors and comedians, we were treated as like second-class citizens, and I think we should go back to that time. I really do sometimes think we've elevated. We're asking Khloe Kardashian about the euro, and
Well, she spends a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, she's
yeah, but
entitled.
it's just ridiculous. There's a reverence for what celebrities think, and anyone who is the thing that was, whenever there's a tragedy of some kind in the nation or something horrible happens, sometimes I've been at events where someone says, can you define courage for us? And I think, don't ask me. I have not earned the right to answer that question.
Right.
And a lot of, and there's there are these sections now in Us magazine and, all these different magazines where they, or people tweet about a national, crisis.
Yes,
or
Conan,
something.
give us your thoughts about the tsunami.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
these people, these people start. Snooki tells us what should happen with TARP. And I've become.
TARP for her is a hair gel, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I become despondent when that happens, and so I myself like to, I think it's just all. I'm much more comfortable one-to-one or in a room like this talking to people and telling them at least what my experience was like if they're interested.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets much beyond that, and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to, I'm going to raise awareness on this issue. I've never been quite comfortable with it. Maybe I just haven't found the right issue, but I haven't been comfortable with it.
Is there a guest you haven't had on for somewhat similar philosophical reasons? Is there somebody that you just don't want to deal with? Either you've had them on, or you've had them on, and after things went the way they did, you
I
said
can't.
never
I
again?
really do. I'm not being cagey. It's just like thousands of people. And
You
have,
needn't name them. I'm just sort of wondering.
No, I think it's important to name. There are people who are very self-serious, and there's an attitude sometimes where a guest comes out and acts like, well, I suppose this is what I'm supposed to do. Have at it, you clown. And they roll their eyes a lot, and a lot of, yes,
At
well.
you?
Yeah, they have that it's an aura that's coming off of them, and I have no patience for it. I think, well, why did you come? And they have a little bit of a feeling of, I don't, and they're lowering themselves to be part of this farce, but I suppose this is what people do, and so there are people like that who the segment's over and I say, I just never want to see them again.
Right.
But for the most part, I get along with people, and I can try and make it work.
Okay. I mean, I've seen the sort of discomfort that you've had with some people who I won't name, but I mean, you can feel it, and I don't recall ever seeing that person back on the show, on either network. So.
Yeah, or alive.
Stalin speaks. Stalin speaks.
Yeah. After the show, I'm just always like, get rid of them.
That explains
This
why.
isn't a cat,
yeah.
by the way.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that. But yeah, there's I don't know. You need the right conditions these shows require, there's a lot of variables. There's the right kind of guest. There's how's the crowd today? What happened in the news? Sometimes they all line up. It doesn't happen often, but when everything lines up, it's magical, and you're getting this taste of a drug that you'll do anything to get that taste again. That's the secret of these shows. You keep fighting back to see if you can get all 9 tumblers to come up, you know, on the bell, and then you're just ecstatic. And sometimes you get close, but no, you just missed out.
Right.
But yeah, I'm in the life is too short category now. I just don't have it. I used to be willing to pretty much do anything and try and make anything work, and then you get to a point where you've been through a lot, you've been doing it for a long time, and you think, I don't think I'm going to win having this person on. I think it's going to be a little bit of a, it's not going to be so much fun.
Right.
This person has a huge ego. This person's wearing sunglasses during the interview. This is.
This person is sitting like this.
Yeah, we're talking about
the
Madeleine
entire
Albright. Impossible. Impossible woman. And they just have that attitude of, and you just think, I don't want to do it anymore.
You don't have to deal with it because it's not really, it's your
Yeah.
show.
Exactly.
Let's do another Twitter question. This is somewhat related to what you had mentioned earlier. Comedy aside, how would you convince the youth of today, I'm rewriting it, to not be cynical about politics?
I think that relates a little bit to, I think cynicism comes a lot from people thinking they have no voice. So you retreat to cynicism when you think nothing's going to change if I get involved. And the whole thing's rigged. And I think that was, going back to really the reason that we're here, that I think President Kennedy was so brilliant at, is I think, you look at the political landscape leading up to his presidency, and really the biggest change overnight was that he very much inspired people. And people talk a lot about it now, and it's become so famous. It's been talked about so much that it can almost start to sound trite. But at the time, I do think that his wit and his ability to inspire young people was something that was markedly different. I mean, he's coming out of this, what many people now think of as this very staid Eisenhower culture, and then suddenly there's this very young president, and he is telling people, you need to get involved. And there's the Peace Corps, and there's his famous inaugural address, and he's telling people that they need to, that it's really up to them. And I think that is electrifying. And so I think the biggest way for people not to be cynical is to convince them, which is true, that being involved actually does make a difference, that people can, look at the world we have now where, Mark Zuckerberg changed our culture. We're talking about someone who, it hasn't even been, I don't think it's been 10 years yet. And he completely changed the culture literally almost overnight. And I'm always telling people that work for me, you would be shocked at how much older people don't know. We don't really know what we're doing. And I tell them, when you watch us working on the show, we've got some knowledge from having done this a couple thousand times, and we're working hard. But up to the last second, I'm trying jokes out on the 20, 21-year-old interns that work on the show and saying, does this make sense to you? Do you think this is good? I'm always looking for the answer. And I'm always telling them, I might be working for you in 5 years. That's the world we live in right now. The media culture is changing so rapidly. Anybody in this room, a 19-year-old could be running the world in 10 years or have revolutionized the way we experience media. So it's a very volatile but also really exciting time. And I think cynicism, the greatest weapon against cynicism is to convince young people, it's amazing what you can do, what you can accomplish.
Right.
If you get involved, and if you don't, being detached and cynical is a defense mechanism. It's a lot easier to do that than to try. So why not? Why not be cynical? It's easy.
How do you, you have this really amazing connection to young people. I remember being really excited when your NBC show started. I was a freshman, and it was this thing that we all had to go see what this guy Conan O'Brien was going to be like. And it started in college for me, and I continued to watch the show. It's a gateway drug.
Yeah.
To nighttime television.
That's how we designed it. Yeah.
But you have managed to be sort of the young person's late night person, and a lot of people support you. A lot of young people are sort of huge fans of yours. They support you in ways that you don't see people supporting Letterman. Mm-hmm. You also were somewhat scandal-free.
So far.
Yes. Yes, don't do anything to screw that up. But I mean, I think that...
Oh, it happened. You just don't know about it.
There's some journalists in this room who will dig that up, so... but I mean, I think it's the power that you have with young people and the sort of relationship that you have. A lot of it, I mean, part of it is social media, but I mean,
right.
it existed before there was Twitter.
Yeah, I think the thing a lot of people respond to, which again is I'm not trying to sell anybody anything in a way. I don't. I think there's a sense of, I've always been very clear, this is who I am, these are the flaws, that didn't go so well. In the show, if something doesn't work, I'm the first one on the show to tell you it didn't work.
Right.
And maybe to go on at length about how it didn't work. There's not an attempt to convince people and market to them. I think young people are extremely sensitive to being marketed to or conned or sold on something. Mm-hmm. They've always been intelligent. They're hyper intelligent about someone older than them trying to convince them of something. So rule number one is just be yourself. And that's actually the first thing when I got the late night show, and I bring them up now because they just did this great documentary about Johnny Carson, but one of the first people I talked to was Johnny Carson, and he said, just be yourself. He said, it's the only way it can work. He didn't say it would work, because he's being honest. He didn't know me. He thought you might be yourself and it would be terrible. But he said, be yourself, it's the only way. And there's an honesty to that. Mm-hmm. And I do think that that's a little bit timeless. I think if you, when you're putting on a persona, there's a lot of people in television that have a persona that is almost the exact opposite of who they really are. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not going to name names, but there are people that are just pushing on you this idea that they're really happy and they're great and they're super nice, and they're not. And you experience that and you think, what I'm always been interested in is the shortest amount of distance between who I really am and what people see. Right. And I think it's impossible to have people see the exact real you, and they probably shouldn't, but this is pretty close. And I think there's a sense there that maybe people think, at least he's being honest. And that show wasn't great, and that didn't go that well, but he sort of made fun of himself and was honest about the fact that it didn't go well. And everything that happened 2 years ago, whatever anybody thought of it, it was honest. This is what happened, and this is how I reacted day to day to day, and this is where I went. And I think there's a reaction to that. So mm-hmm. I think there's something about not trying to project something fake to
right.
people.
Well, what did you, I mean, going back to the Tonight Show situation, what did you hope to do with that show that was either...
Keep it for a while. It's a true story. I have an elliptical machine in my house because it helps me calm down to work out. And so the whole Tonight Show thing happens, and then I go on this tour, and then I come back from the tour, and then we have going to make this new show with TBS, and my daughter, I never really even talked to my kids about what was happening. They just knew, Daddy's, this crazy stuff is happening, but it's all fine, it's all good. And I'm working out on my little elliptical machine, and my daughter, Nev, who at the time was 7, wandered into my room, and I'm on my elliptical machine, and I'm going to start the TBS show in about 3 weeks. And I'm just working on my elliptical machine. She came in, she said, Daddy? And I said, yeah. And she said, you're starting a new show? And I said, yeah, I'm starting a new show in about 3 weeks. And she said, she just looked at me, and I'm on the machine, and she said, can you try and keep this one longer than the last one? So she's getting her allowance back in 9 years. But it's just this great, honest moment where it was like, yeah, I'm going to really try. So, like I say, all TV shows, even if you've been doing them forever, are a work in progress. So, you get a show, you start, you have your problems, you start working through them, and I always thought, well, I won't really know because it was a process that was interrupted, but we'll do it here. We'll do it at TBS, so we'll find it here.
Okay. I don't know. Oh, wait. Yeah, so the screen does move. How important do you think your social media team has been to your success?
It's been huge. I have great people. I found social media as a necessity. I was not, I'm kind of a Luddite. I'm not good with...
Do you remember the day someone walked up to you and said,
Oh, I remembered,
Twitter?
I remembered exactly what happened. We were thinking about launching this tour, and I was off the air, and I was forbidden. I could not, it was legally prohibited from television, radio, and these different media things. And someone said, you should go on Twitter. And I said, I don't know, I don't know, go on Twitter. And then I started thinking about it, and I started looking into it. The first thing we did was find out legally, can I go on Twitter? We found out that now, trust me, lawyers will shut down, they'll put that in, but this was such a new world we were in that they hadn't prohibited Twitter. It wasn't in there. So it was actually like you imagine yourself being locked in a tower and there's no other way except you find a little crack and you can slip a note through it. It was the one way I could talk to people. So I started to, I realized it's just a joke writing exercise. It's actually a very good exercise. You get so many characters. Mm-hmm. You can't go beyond that. And if you can't say something funny, and it's like writing a haiku. If you can't do it in that form, it's a great discipline. Yep. Jokes probably shouldn't be longer than that. So it forced me to, how many characters is it? It's
160.
Yeah, I'm constantly writing something, and then someone on my team will be like, that's one character too many. But then you realize a way to shorten it, and it's shortening it and shortening it and shortening it. And it's actually why I believe the one person whose speeches endure more than anybody's is Lincoln. He just obsessively, everyone else in his era was verbose and would speak for, famously the guy who spoke before Lincoln at Gettysburg spoke for like 4 hours, and everybody was just melting into their beards. And then Lincoln gets up and gives the Gettysburg Address, and it's like I defy anyone to find an extra word in there. He just boiled things down and had a little bit of a run and then a short phrase, that just punctuates it and is haunting. And so I actually think it's crazy. I think people are going to write these really prophetic, amazing things on Twitter because it's going to force them to be economical. It's going to force them to say what you want in it's like the same rule for everybody. It's very democratic.
Right. And so, I mean, you obviously embrace it, but I mean, do you do is everything that I get in my Twitter stream from you? Yeah,
they're all from me. What I do is if I talk to the writers about like who's got funny ideas, because it is every day. So, right. So I'd be lying if I said every single thing that I come up with was my idea, because it's not. But I get help writing them I work with really funny, creative people. But I write a lot of them. I help craft a bunch of, like sort of the tone of it, and because it's got to be me. It can't just sound like somebody else.
Oh, they sound like you.
Yeah, and it's been, the social media thing has been, everyone's wondering how is TV, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday at this cable convention, but it's worth repeating. Everyone's wondering how TV and this social media is going to work together, and does it work together? And here's an example of when it really worked together. About a month ago, Will Ferrell called me up and said, I want to announce that I'm doing Anchorman 2. Can I come on your show as Ron Burgundy and interrupt the show and announce that I'm making a new movie? And I said no. I said that would be fantastic. So we worked it out. And then we decided old school television is you don't give anything away. You say, tune into Conan for your special surprise at 11. That's not the way the media works anymore. Right. It has completely changed. So what we did was we put together these pictures of me with Will / as Ron Burgundy, and we tweeted to the 5-point-something million people that we have and put on Facebook for all the people we have there that look who is coming to my show tonight, and it's me with Ron Burgundy. We started to drive this huge wave of interest through social media that came back around and created a wave that gave us the highest rating that we had had at that point for like a year on the Conan show, right. Which then generates more interest on the social network. So it is like it's a biosphere where everything's working together. It doesn't happen that often, but I got a glimpse. I thought I had a quick glimpse of this is the future, that everyone's on social media, and that's maybe driving them to an event over here. They see that creates a number of viewers for that show, but then that feeds into other social media sites.
Well, can I tell you the downside of that?
Yeah.
There was so much Ron Burgundy-ness during that period. I thought Ron Burgundy had died.
Oh, you thought
you were like, oh wait, he's not even real.
Right. No, he was.
So I mean, it was so saturated that I actually didn't know what was going on.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that it's a culture where people go from I'm interested to I'm sick of it in about 8 seconds, and so that's the downside.
It got me to the show, though. I'll say that. Did you know marrying Scott and David on your show would prompt POTUS to support marriage equality?
No, and I don't think it did, obviously. But we had that's just another thing that happened accidentally. Is we had 2 people on our someone who works for me on the show, Scott Cronick, was intending while we were in New York, because it's legal there, to marry his partner, and then someone said, Conan, you can go online and you can marry them if you want to do that. And we just looked into it, and I was able to go online and get the ministerial certificate, and I was able to go on a neighboring site and become a Jedi Knight. And got like a dental degree. I mean, I was just, it's scary. In about 20 minutes, I was the most learned man in the world. But we did that, and I actually really liked it because it was a real thing, and it meant a lot to Scott and to his partner, and we did it in a real way. We didn't do it in a comedic way, and it was just and it was something that they wanted to do. So I thought that was really nice, but it didn't come from an activist spirit. It didn't come from again, the best things just happen.
Right.
They just happen because life takes you that way.
But isn't that like a really good example of what we were talking about before, which is this organic idea of the way politics can kind of work in comedy, so that it doesn't, I don't think that is, I mean, it is readable as a political act.
Yeah.
But the nature of it, from your standpoint, was just humanist.
Yeah, and I think
that's the whole thing about.
But I think that's there's a place we're getting to in our country where things are so polarized and everything is we've always been a polarized country. It seems to have gone to an extreme right now, but you do think that people seem to be able to tell when something comes from a real place and is not just doctrine.
No, that seemed really.
I need to say this in order to fit into this party or that party. People seem to know the difference, and they seem to accept it, and that's probably the way. Eventually, that's how most change happens. Is it comes from, it's not, Hollywood actors or comedians making change. It's individual human beings organically coming to a place and taking a leap of faith. That's what gets us there.
Right.
It's not someone from a movie telling us what we should do.
You mean Chuck and Larry? Their big wedding, didn't that Adam Sandler?
Oh, that, yes. I'm sure that had a huge influence.
Did you get any feedback from people?
We had a lot of positive feedback. You'd have, we had.
Was there any feedback that surprised you? I guess is.
No, I was more surprised. I wasn't. I was more surprised that it did feel like there was not a lot of, there was more of just an acceptance, I think, and especially, and not that I was exposed to that much criticism from people who wouldn't like that, but it did feel like this country's been moving that way for quite a while, and whether, obviously the big debate now is whether this is something that people nationally want to, make an issue, and how should this be treated constitutionally, but I think that was just a moment. That was a moment with real people, and it was, I think, accepted that way.
Have you come to regret the level of candor and honesty on display in the documentary Conan O'Brien?
No, that was always the intention, was not to make. When I met with the director, he said, I don't want to make rattle and hum. Like, I don't want to make anything that deifies. And I was like, neither do I. Like, let's just let's.
So you went the opposite direction, actually.
Oh yeah, we went to actually just showing how much. I mean, he actually edited it to show much more fatigue. It's most exhausting. He only used the moments when I'm my most tired, most exhausted, most. But I think people need to know that this is how hard it is. This is there's a lot of work, and the theme of that movie was Conan O'Brien Can't Stop. Is I cannot. I am constantly pushing myself, and then complaining to people around me that I'm being pushed too hard. And then when people around me say, "Well, do you want to stop?" I snap at them and say, "How dare you suggest I stop?" So you get a nice insight. They should study it. Psychiatrists should study it. It is it's an interesting look at someone who's resenting how hard they're working when no one's making them work that hard. It's all coming from within. And ultimately, they blame their parents. I'm glad you're in the front row for that.
So we have to wrap up. But I've been given a request in closing. You sort of did it a little bit earlier, but someone wants you to do your JFK impersonation.
Oh, it's funny. It's funny. It's really not a JFK impression. I used to do, when I worked on The Simpsons, there's a Mayor Quimby, who's clearly a Kennedy. And I noticed that whenever I would go into that on the show, I'll tell a joke, and when it does particularly well, and the crowd's cheering, I just start to go like, "We can do better, and we'll do better," and they start cheering more, and it became this thing, and I think there's a whole generation that thought that it came from me doing Mayor Quimby, which was a Simpsons thing.
Right.
And it always worked on the tour, and it was something that just morphed out of, there was a very, very silly piece that I did on stage years ago called, where I played Ted Kennedy as a baby. And I did this in my 20s, and literally the lights would come up on stage, and it was the silliest, dumbest thing ever, but I'd be wearing a diaper and a bonnet on my back, and I'd be going, dip, 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 dip. And dip, 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 dip. Dip, 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 dip. And then I'd stop for a second and everyone would wait, and then I'd go, dip, 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 dip. And it was so ridiculous, and you just got me uninvited here. Carolyn's gonna, what did he close with? You don't want to know.
You don't want to know. Yeah.
Dip, 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 dip. But it's just silly. It's just there's
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Conan, for...
Thanks for coming out, everybody. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks. Of course.
Great job. That was great.
That's good.
Thank you for doing
That's
it.
really good. So I think they're going to take you that way.
Go that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then...
Bye, everybody.